So you've got the AV world and you've got the Teams world, and those two obviously come together. And there's definitely a little bit of tension there. An interesting thing is Microsoft, and I think the other UCaaS providers, want to make it simple and want to scale. So things like express install, under an hour install, things like bars. I think traditional AV often want to make it really awesome, but like lots of mics, lots of cameras, multi-day install. So there's this kind of tension of the two worlds of making it super simple and quick to install, and the kind of advanced, you need multiple mic arrays complexity. You have to think about what the customer wants. The customer wants to spend the minimum amount of money for the maximum result, right? So none of the customers are excited to spend 3 days of pro services for a small room. They'd rather have more rooms quicker. So if you think about it from that perspective, but there's always going to be the exec room, the board room, the experience space where you do want to invest in that extra, panaz, and everything really matters. The question for the industry is, where's that ratio? Where does the line sit where good enough's good enough and where I need to make that extra investment? But I think it's only going one way. If you look at some of the announcements from the show, it's more simplicity, it's quicker install, it's auto configuration. That's where we're going. The general philosophy with Microsoft Teams Rooms is to try and make the UI and UX similar to the Teams client. So the join button's the same, it's one click to join, cameras are auto configuring, but definitely users are still sometimes intimidated about using a room if they only use it once every X versus their laptop or desktop potentially. But I'd question, what is the other system that is easier or more complicated on either side of a Teams room? It's hard to say the whole world isn't about AI at the moment, so that's definitely a trend that is both global and in our space. And definitely if you look at Microsoft, the primary messaging is Copilot and AI across the stack. Obviously that story comes into Teams and Teams rooms quite heavily. So Teams is still 320 million users, Teams has 1 million Teams rooms out there. Microsoft's thing now is, how do we activate AI for business value there? But I think it's a fair point. If you look across not just Microsoft everywhere, it's AI, AI, AI. For me, the big thing is, where's the business value? So if you look at Microsoft, they're now pivoting to an agentic type model. They have this thing called facilitator agent, they have interpreter. Facilitator is real-time minutes dynamically in the meeting, and interpreter is the thing I'm most excited about, which is real-time translation. So the remote receiver can choose the language they choose to receive in, and it will translate. And even different remote people can have different languages as well. So Teams is not the center of the Microsoft world anymore. It was for 3 years in a row. Now Copilot and AI is the center of the world, but it's very well aligned to Teams and the Teams story. In terms of devices, we've now got Windows-based boards. So previously only Surface Hub was a Windows-based Teams Rooms device, but now we've got Max Hub, Yealink, and others will follow with Windows-based boards. And Microsoft have teased that on the roadmap we'll be able to have apps. So have the Edge browser running kind of containerized apps on the boards, which is a nice step forward back to what the Service Hub used to do. More generally, we've seen some other people come into the OEM ecosystem. So Shaw have announced a range of Windows-based devices or Windows-based Teams rooms. And we've seen more announcements around MDEP. So Shaw have announced, Crestron have announced. We know we've got stuff coming from Max Hub and others. So it feels like it's quite a busy ecosystem for Teams devices. Also, Logi announced their Board 65 with the Fash flip around, really nice stuff. But beyond just hardware, there's been a lot of talk of BYOD. So Cisco did a BYOD bar for the first time. A lot of the Teams devices also have a BYOD mode. And you're seeing Microsoft embrace BYOD and kind of say, yes, for them, Teams Rooms is first and best, but BYOD is a reality. So how do we optimize that experience? BYOD is really interesting because the hardware and software solutions have come on a great deal. So I think a lot of people have shell shock of BYOD, of having a USB-A webcam, some kind of speaker puck, and HDMI or VGA, and trying to cram that into a laptop. If you look at modern BYOD, you've got bars that are network connected, that can be updated remotely, that can do digital signage, and one USB-C with power, data, and AV. You've also got various wireless capabilities now to plug in, dongles, the barcodes, and the Crestrons. So I think BYOD has got a lot slicker. The other thing is the laptops, so particularly the Macs are incredibly powerful, the Windows equivalents, so you can get a lot of power and a lot of capability out of a laptop. So I think BYOD is a much better experience than it back in the pandemic times where we were scrambling to make it work. So what Microsoft are trying to do with MDEP is create a kind of sustainable approach to a non-Google based Android for the OEMs. Now, some OEMs have invested a lot of time and money in building their own Android distributions, doing their own secret sauce. So for them, it's less exciting because they've made the engineering investment. For other OEMs, it's a great thing because they can ride on Microsoft's massive investment in security and patching and compliance. Again, I tend to look at it from the customer's point of view. I think it's inarguable. There are a lot of Android devices out there in customers that are not well patched, that are not well maintained, that are not looked after. And I don't think customers always understand how Android works, how it's patched, how it's maintained. So I think from a customer perspective, it's particularly quite nice to have Microsoft's blessing to get Android into the enterprise. However, there's an equally fair comment from the OEMs that potentially they like having control over the Android layer. They made the investment. So we'll see this story develop over 2025, but certainly it feels like Microsoft are nudging towards MDEP is the enterprise blessed secure Android, and life would be better if there's a single blessed Android that customers know they can trust. My whole remit is keeping on top of Microsoft Teams and Teams ecosystem. So I spend time with enterprises, with Microsoft and with the wider Teams ecosystem and just decoding it all. So we have a lot of free content. Everything is community based and free to access. We have online events, we have the newsletter, we have the podcast, and we bring in SMEs to do briefings as well. So all available at empowering.cloud. Jump there, you'll see the videos, you'll see the newsletter, you'll see the content. And if anybody's got any ideas for questions around Teams or the ecosystem or content ideas, always happy to hear them.